Hair looks great, Kent. Don't worry. We're not that late.
I'm wearing a hat. The Chiefs' biggest challenger to their three-peat just might be the Baltimore Ravens, and they face them week 1. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's a live Craigslist edition of the KC Live, presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. We are incredibly thankful for them being day ones with us here at KC Sports Network. Any banking needs you might have whatsoever, they are your go-to. I am here with my go-to, Matthew Lane. Matthew, how are we doing?
Listen, it's gonna be different here for a couple goes. You know, Craig is gone from this podcast, but not forgotten by this podcast, and we are obligated to say he is great and he is doing fine. He is okay. Everything is all right with Craig. He's just, he's got a lot going on. So for the foreseeable future, it is just Kent and I. And you missed it. Listen, the food scale. Oh, the food scale's done, isn't it?
Yep. T. Smith says he misses Craig and the food scale already. So
listen, I love Craig and I miss him, but now that you just like double whammy me by reminding me that the food scale is also gone, I don't know what we're doing here.
Wait, can the food scale leave with Craig's like regularity on the show too? Like, is that how this works?
You sent a DM to me the other day already pitching ideas for next year's food scale.
I leaned into the bit for one time, and this is how I'm repaid. One time. I do want to say something really quick. Craig went out in the fashion that he would prefer to go out. He said, we're going to do it at the end of the show. We're not going to let Maddie or Kent say anything about him. We're just going to close the show out and just leave it. And I love it. I kind of respect it. I know exactly what he was doing. I almost cried once. Maddie remained indifferent the entire time as usual. But I will say, we love Craig madly. We are incredibly excited for him in his kind of next phase of life. And it's not that he's going to be just absent from anything we're doing anymore. It's just that you're probably not going to see him for a while, and you'll just kind of see him intermittently as he's able to pop in and say hi. So I told him we have to do a few 3-box shows in the next year. So it's not going to just be when we need a replacement. He'll be around from time to time, but we are incredibly happy for Craig. And, I think he made the right choices for the right reasons, and I'm very happy for him. I don't know if you have anything to say. You probably don't, but I'm gonna make you anyway.
I do. I want to do a Craig scale where we do it based on his greatest accomplishments. I think that is what next year's roster scaling is going to be. I'm going to start working on that now. But that's perfect. There is no better way to honor Craig than inventing an entire scale to his greatness and using that to judge the Chiefs by.
What if Craig Praise is just the third character on our show? And it was just us randomly praising him. He would despise it so much. He would actively stop listening. And that would be kind of funny.
I want him to listen. So we should move on to some Chiefs talk. It's going to be, it's going to take Kent and I probably a little bit to find our feet. We're fine doing shows with one another, but as you guys have said, there's tension here. Sometimes Kent hates me. Sometimes I love him too much. And it just becomes a problem. And so we'll just have to see if we can figure this out long-term with just the two of us. But, we'll be here.
I will say, we have some stuff in the works for how this show will look during the season too. So we're kind of working through some stuff to try to get this show, it'll look a little different during the season, and we're really excited about it. And so, there will be more about that as we get closer to the season, but we are in peak summer mode. Maddie, I was literally at the pool 5 minutes before the show started. I was walking back from our neighborhood pool. I've been there 5 times already, and it's only June 3rd. I am going to try to live at the pool this year. Do you guys get out to the pool very much?
We have season passes to the local water park. So it's not quite as big as Oceans of Fun for those people in Kansas City, but a little smaller version. We have season passes for that. There is a neighborhood pool not down the street, but a mile or so away that we can go to from time to time. It's just, with extra kids not being walking distance, it's not as frequent. So we had an above ground pool, but one that you had to clean and stuff for a while. The past 2 years, it finally bit the dust. So, we have a pond. We also have a pond. I send the kids out into a pond. So that also happens.
You put them in the pond?
Yes.
So where do you drink your gin and tonics? Is it in the pond? Was it in the above ground pool? Do you drive a mile? Where do you go?
Where do I get in the hammock or on my couch or on the front porch?
Not like a pool gin and tonic guy.
I mean, not when I'm just sitting around with my kids. No.
Okay. Well, you never know. Anyways, so if you've been watching the lab for, I don't know, ever, we've been doing this kind of every year. I think that we've done this show. We kind of go game by game and we look at the matchups the Chiefs will be playing, go in order of the schedule. We talk about various different things, about the team, kind of about the staff, some of the changes that the roster has made for each of these teams, that kind of stuff. And so it's our game preview series, and we are starting with week 1. We are starting with the Baltimore Ravens. Maddie, what do we think the quality of this roster is? And no, don't get muscle memory. This isn't on a food scale. You can just go ahead and just talk about the roster in its totality. It's okay.
Oh, I was going to say Nebraska fresh fish was what I was going with, mahi from Nebraska. No, I'm kidding. It's a good roster. I think there's a little bit more turnover to this team though. And we got to talk about, guys that they are missing from last year to this year. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but overall the roster is still very good. I think there's a little bit more uncertainty with this team than there has been in years past. And I think even when we did this exercise last year, I went on a big rant about how this isn't the same Ravens team that we have gotten used to. And well, they weren't, but yet somehow they still had the best record in the AFC. So they were a lot better the way it played out throughout last season than I think this year. But it's a good roster. Obviously, they have an MVP caliber player at quarterback. They add Derrick Henry. Spoiler. They have Zay Flowers. They have a lot of good players on this roster. I do think though this team has a few more holes than years past, and their kind of desire to not bring in very many or high price free agents or to constantly cycle in young guys that they draft, it's a little bit catching up to them. I don't know if they have as many guys in the tank who are just ready to step in and ready to roll because they don't like to sign guys to big second contracts. They don't like to bring in big name free agents. So I do think there's a few more holes on this roster than there were last year. And we'll just kind of have to see if they did have young guys ready to step up or not.
Yeah, it's an interesting, talking a little bit about the turnover from this team. So I think we talked about this when we were talking about the Ravens a little bit earlier in the summer, but if they were eligible for more than 4 compensatory picks, the Ravens would currently have 7 compensatory picks. That's the amount of roster turnover they had. No team other than, I think the Cowboys have lost 5, and it's not even close after that. Everybody else is 3 or less. So, the Ravens have lost a lot of players that have been contributors and that have earned money elsewhere. You're talking about Patrick Queen, Jadeveon Clowney, Kevin Zeitler, Geno Stone, John Simpson, Ronald Darby, Devin Duvernay, Gus Edwards. Some of those guys are players that they hit on, in the draft. Some of those guys are players that, they've had under cost control for, an extended period of time that are now walking out the door. And I do think it's a little bit interesting. You're right that, that's an unprecedented, that's a ridiculous amount. I don't know if there's been very many other teams that have been able to achieve 7 teams wanting you at or 7, players being wanted at a level that would warrant a compensatory pick. That's really an impressive feat. But this is also to Maddie's point, this is kind of what they do. This is how they do it. This is their model. They love compensatory picks. First off, this is a team that really does like to churn and burn and accumulate more swings and more bites at the apple, and then draft all of the players that social media likes with all of their picks. It is always every year there's going to be 2 or 3 guys, that the Ravens wind up taking that everybody else is oh, why is he still on the board? Oh, of course he went. Of course he went to Baltimore. This year, Tez Walker in the 4th, TJ Tampa in the 4th. Prime examples of a couple of the guys that they started falling down the board a little bit, and this team takes advantage of them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Hold on,
go.
I was just saying before we move on, like just you're talking about like, yeah, they have a lot of comp picks coming in, and this is how this team runs. But then that means guys have to step up. Guys have to step up and replace the guys that get those comp picks. And for this entire stretch, since 2000, the Ravens have been great at finding guys that are ready to step up, and they very well could again this year, right? I can't sit here and say they won't for sure, but like when you're looking down the roster, like, is Kyle Van Noy really about ready to replicate what last year was without Jadeveon Clowney, who was having a great season for them across from him? Is Odafe Owe ready to finally take that step and be that star number one edge rusher because they Clowney is now gone? Is David Ojabo? Like they have a handful of guys that need to step up to replace Clowney. Then you go to the back end and like, okay, Brandon Stevens is now playing a lot of extra reps because they're missing some guys coming in. Or you flip it over to the offensive line, Ben Cleveland, Andrew Voorhees, guys that were either too injured or unable to win starting jobs last year now have to start. So it's just they have a lot of roster spots where these guys were either not available or not good enough to start last year for that team, and now they're going to be expected to. Again, the Ravens are really good at this, but at some point in time, you might not hit that in offseason. And if this is that year, and then you look at some other questions that they have, like, there's a chance that there's a slight step back from what they were last year in terms of roster talent.
And I think it's valid. And I think it's a valid argument to be made. And by the way, not only did they lose 7 players that would have been eligible for the compensatory pick, but they also had 4 that were non-free agent lost that got a little bit of money from other teams too. So like they lost a lot of their role players, a lot of, contributors onto this team. And I think I do agree with you. It's a lot more than the norm, which is, it's an absurd amount to walk out the door and not even really try to replace. They're continuing to play that comp game. And it's for 3 6-round picks, by the way. It's a 4th and 3 6-round picks. Like that's not life-changing, but
fake picks.
Yeah. I think the thing with the Ravens is, they got good contributions from this list of players, but they stumbled into a Jadeveon Clowney, right? And Jadeveon Clowney wound up having a career year, goes out and gets paid $10 million. So like you're talking about losing the edge, losing one of your best, if not your best edge rusher, losing Kevin Zeitler, an experienced guard, Geno Stone, a solid safety, another interior offensive lineman, and John Simpson. Like these are pieces, and some of the value pieces that they've lost played well, like a Ronald Darby playing well, adding himself to the compensatory formula. So yeah, it's a lot of turnover on this roster. And you wonder, you look at some of their, the players that they've added to this team. You wonder, yeah, it's a good question. Are they going to be able to, kind of sustain the model, especially with the turnover on the staff? Matthew, what do you think the quality of the Ravens staff is?
This is, I guess, so last year, Todd Monken comes in, the offense kind of gets revamped. It looks better. It looks fresh. We will see how the NFL adjusts after one season to where Lamar Jackson wasn't as much of a designed run threat. And the team, while they still leaned on the run game, you saw them try to pass the ball a little bit more frequently in high leverage situations. And I don't want to sit here and say it caught teams off guard, but like it had success. Now, how are teams going to adjust to that? What will they do? Still a little bit of an unknown, but it's the other side. Zach Ward takes over as their defensive coordinator. And here's the big thing. They lost like 3 or 4 defensive coaches from last year's staff this offseason that went on to become head coaches or defensive coordinators of other teams. Now, Zach Orr is the guy that they chose. He is the guy of all the assistant coaches to come in and take this job. He is the one that they chose. So you got to, first of all, like consider that. He was their first choice after, they lose their DC and Mike McDaniels. But then they come back and he's the one they bring in. Now, what's it going to look like though? Is this going to be the same defense? Is it going to be the same stuff they've been running this past year with all the sim pressures and bringing guys from all these different angles? Or is it going to be a little different or played with the Ravens while the defense was still under a similar system back? I think in the mid 2000s, he was a player for them as a linebacker. So he's been around that organization for a long time. They have a lot of trust in him, but we just don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what this is going to do now that they are under a new coordinator for, the second time. And I think it's 3 years now.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a tough ask for this team to continue to churn on that side too. And I will say that is one of the hallmarks of John Harbaugh is he's been an outstanding hirer of coaches. He's been really good about picking coaches, especially on the defensive side of the football. I think he's done a pretty good job there. Todd Monken, I think in year 2 is really big for this team and for Lamar. I think, I like what they did offensively, continuing to help build and accentuate Lamar without running him into the ground. I like I like how Todd Monken's been able to utilize the pass catchers that he's had, the offense that he, has kind of put together with the running game. It's going to be interesting to see what that version is in year 2 for Todd Monken. Maybe he should run the ball a little bit more if they get into if they get into the AFC Championship game again, though. Only thought. I don't know. Maybe just a little bit of that, but John Harbaugh is one of the best. I think one of the best head coaches in football, and he's done a great job adapting and building and growing throughout his time in Baltimore. So I like what they're doing. And I mean, Chris Horton, special teams coordinator. I mean, that's really where it's at. I mean, he just has to tell Justin Tucker to kick it from 64 yards away without any problem, and we're good. So,
do you think he can tell him which side he needs to warm up on?
I don't think so, which is why there was a problem. Anyways, we are going to take a break, and we'll be back with more about the Ravens right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
I've been a golfer for 5 years now. It's one of my favorite things to do in this world. I absolutely love it. And for years, I've been hearing people say, hey, nobody makes clubs like PXG. And they're right. I went for a fitting and I saw for myself. I went and swung the PXG Black Ops driver. And I'll tell you, it is an absolute game changer. You no longer have to sacrifice distance for forgiveness. And I learned that better than anybody when I went in and had a fitting at the Overland Park location at PXG. Went in, they took a look at my swing. They took a look at the analytics on my swing, saw some things in it that were, kind of, hey, look, hey, maybe you're lifting the ball a little bit too much. So they adjusted the loft on my clubs. Then they looked at my swing speed and they said, okay, hey, you know what? Ready for this, Bounty? I had enough swing speed that I was an extra stiff shaft. So I was pretty proud that I was able to generate enough swing speed to kind of get something like that. So they looked at that, put me in an extra stiff shaft, adjusted the length of that a little bit, put me in something that's going to fit my game the best. I got a lot more control of the club, and I'm still able to hit it as far, if not farther, actually a little bit farther than what I was hitting it in the first place. So it was an incredible experience, and the people there at PXG are awesome. Their experience, and knowledge of the products is just second to none, and they care, and they're fun. It's not like you're just going in there and they're sitting there sternly staring at you. They're engaging with you. They're having a good conversation. You're having a good time while you're getting a fitting at PXG, and every time I go out there, I have a great time. PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting at PXG, Kansas City, 75171 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen balls free. You can't beat that. Go get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen balls free. I've played with those balls. They are awesome. That's pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/KC Laboratory. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th, so you only got a little more time left. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. Matthew, this is going to be a short segment. New additions from the Baltimore Ravens, like 2 free agents and a bunch of draft picks. Talk about a new addition.
Oh, Derrick Henry signed up. I mean,
what?
I mentioned him earlier, but we're going to go with Derrick Henry. The Ravens bring in one of the few running backs who's been an active, massive difference maker in the NFL for the past, 5, 6, 7 seasons, practically carrying the Titans offense to big records, playoff runs. And now he goes to the Ravens, a team that should be perfect for him. if it was last year or the previous few years. But then you look at this offensive line ahead of Derrick Henry, and like Ronnie Stanley last year was in a timeshare at left tackle, something you don't see except for like college, because he was coming back from an injury and they haven't been able to trust him to stay healthy. And then they're next to him is Voorhees, as I already mentioned, is starting at left guard for them finally. Linderbaum, very good center. He's stable. Then you have Ben Cleveland, and probably starting across or next to him is Roger Rosengarten, a rookie, or Daniel Falele. Like that's a lot of uncertainty ahead of Derrick Henry. So yeah, the team makes sense. When you think of Ravens, you think of a downhill rushing attack that would fit Derrick Henry perfectly. But then you look at the players that are going to be blocking for him, and you start to, maybe get a little hesitant to like, is he the type of running back that is going to make those guys always look the best? Is he going to be the guy that's going to be able to make guys miss at the line of scrimmage in the backfield? We'll have to see. I think we all remember Dan Sorensen hitting Derrick Henry right in the thighs at the line of scrimmage numerous times in the playoffs. Like that was a huge deal in that game, was Henry not being able to get going downhill. I wonder how well this team will be able to run downhill. If they can, Henry's a great addition. If they can't, and it's got to be a lot more him creating the lanes himself, then I wonder if this is going to be a little bit of a disappointing match that was made this past offseason.
Do you think, just sidebar, do you think that the Chiefs, like Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, insinuated that the Chiefs were the team that was interested in Roger Rosengarten and that they needed to make sure that they were going to get him instead of Kansas City? Do you buy that it was Roger Rosengarten instead of Kingsley Suamataia?
I don't, and I'm going to lean heavily on the Andy's preference for longer armed offensive tackles. Now, the Baltimore Ravens also like long arm offensive tackles. In fact, their offensive tackles, the majority of them that they have drafted have a longer average arm length than the Chiefs do. So that argument works on both sides, and the Ravens still liked Rosengarten. So you could say that the Chiefs were going to see him as an outlier as well. But I think at the end of the day, like if you look at what the Chiefs have done historically, it's unlikely that Rosengarten was the guy. It's less likely that he was this perfect outlier for two different teams that prefer long-arm offensive tackles than it was that he was just an outlier for one and not the other. And then I go back and look at everything that has been said about Suamataia coming out of the Chiefs camp and their side. I think it's pretty clear he was a guy that they were targeting for a while, and it was not Roger Rosengarten. Now, do I think that the 49ers may have been interested in him? Because I know that was also swirling around in there. Yeah, that's a possibility, but I don't know the Chiefs.
When you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens roster, they really, they hit about every position group with a draft pick. It feels like they were really intentional about trying to add young, controllable depth at just about every room. Even quarterback. They drafted Devin Leary in the 6th round, but I think they've continued to give themselves worthy swings. Nate Wiggins at the end of round 1 is a really solid pick. Roger Rosengarten, we talked about the right tackle there, but doing what they do on day 3, and look, this has yielded good results. This isn't just swings and interesting swings. Isaiah Likely, like they've hit on guys like him in round 4, and like they've been able to find. And I think some people liked Isaiah Likely a little bit more, but. This is what this team does. They give themselves a lot of bites at the apple, and they'll take swings on guys. But, Adisa Isaac, TJ Tampa, Tez Walker, round 3, round 4 guys. Like, I think those are good additions. And, TJ Tampa has his red flags because of the athletic profile, but the tape's really good. Tez Walker, a little bit of a one-trick pony, but, in round 4, like that's a great swing on a guy that has a singular dominant trait that I think plays well with the room that they have currently. Like, I think when you look at what they have outside of getting a guy that can kind of stretch the field a little bit and being able to find someone that can play that role specifically in round 4, I think that's a really good pull for them. So I think they did a pretty good job drafting this year again, which is not surprising at all. All right, Matthew, give me a player to watch for the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers, 2nd-year wide receiver out of Boston College. I think, Chiefs fans remember him because he had the L'Jarius Sneed caused the fumble on him right at the end zone, which kind of, I don't want to say sealed the game, but made it look very, very unlikely for the Ravens to come back in that game. Very good wide receiver last year for the Ravens. He became their wide receiver 1 as the year went on. They relied more and more on him and less on Odell Beckham Jr. or Rashad Bateman. And I think that they really need him to take that next step. Now, the thing is, he's really small. And so that limits him to the slot sometimes. And like, he's a very good athlete. His start stop is exceptional. But I do wonder if he's ready to take that next step and be this full go-to outside or inside wide receiver on every single down that uses the whole field. I think we got to see that step from him this year. We got to see him rein in some concentration issues in terms of drops and route depth, because I think that was a big issue for them, was his in particular spacing and timing on a lot of routes. So there's a lot of upside there with Flowers, but I do think that he needs to take another step. If they are going to rely more on the passing game again, Todd Monken's going to keep bringing that along. If they are going to lead into Lamar Jackson being a thrower and not just a runner, I think they need Flowers to take a big step. And this also leads us to a question that I think we got from Eric Duke here: more confidence in Zay Flowers coming into the NFL last year or Xavier Worthy this year? I'm going to take the easy way out. I have more confidence in Xavier Worthy right now than I did Zay Flowers last year because of the teams they went to. Worthy gets to go play with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid. Flowers had to go to Baltimore and play with, great year from Lamar Jackson, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, right? Todd Monken, good year. He's not Andy Reid. So like, the situation for Worthy is better than what Flowers was. And we saw Flowers have a really good year last season. So it's not downplaying him at all. I just think the situation for Worthy is really good. You look at their college production and some of their profile, and it's a lot of similar stuff. Just Worthy happens to be a little bit faster. So I think I have more faith at right this moment than I did a year ago in Worthy panning out. And a lot of it's because of his situation.
And look, Zay Flowers was awesome in his rookie year too. Like, he had a very strong rookie year. So like, credit to him for what he was able to do. I'm a little curious. I'm trying to see if I can figure out what grades we had for these two players. Zay Flowers, we had like a mid 2, strong 2, and then I think that's about where we had Xavier Worthy too. So like, I think we had him tiered very similar when we were kind of going through our NFL, our draft stuff. But yeah, I think the situation with Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy, and a guy that has the ability to stretch the field vertically, but has already shown an ability to build off of that, where if he's really threatening vertically down the field and creating that stress, he can do a lot of stuff with the underneath stuff, with underneath the vertical, like a curl and a comeback and like a hitch. He's got, some easy completions kind of, coming down the pike for him if he's able to continue to build off that vertical plane. And that's just something that not very many other guys that the Chiefs have had in that vertical ability outside of Tyreek Hill have really been able to add kind of as a layer. So, I think that's a really good question. Okay. Players to watch. Mine was going to be Mark Andrews. When this offense was humming for Baltimore, it was because Mark Andrews was involved. Like, he is a game-changing player. He's a safety blanket for Lamar Jackson. I know he played and struggled through some injury down the stretch. When he's healthy, that is a very dangerous combination, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. And so I think it continues to be a key component in this team's ability to have success and get over the Chiefs hump if they're going to. Speaking of that, how does this team beat the Chiefs, Matthew?
Oh, I'm gonna take a step back. I just want to say, pairing with your Mark Andrews thing, I think that combo, you got to slow down. There's not a buffer now. You got to slow down some of your transitions.
You know what? You could let it lie. You could just maybe save it for when Tucker throws the bumper up at the end. You could just blurt it all out at that point. I don't know.
No, there's way too much to say. Mark Andrews, I think, is a good one. I think the pairing specifically, how are they going to use him and Likely together? Because anytime Isaiah Likely has to step on the field, good things happen. Like, he does a good job replacing Mark Andrews. Can they figure out a way to use both of them at the same time? Putting them both out there on the field at the same time goes against their identity of this downhill physical run game. So I think that's been the hesitation, but can they figure it out? Can they figure out how to use Likely and Andrews together this season? Because I think that could be a huge step for them. So that, it relates.
Hey, Matthew, I got a question for you.
Oh, you should do a great transition right here.
How does this team beat the Chiefs?
Oh, well, they play them in the regular season. That's when the Chiefs decide to lose to AFC teams, right? Okay, they win because the game plays out similar to last year for the Chiefs offensively. They maybe start a little bit hot, but after the scripted plays, once both teams kind of settle down a little bit, the Baltimore Ravens defense happens to be good enough to slow down the Chiefs offense, which is still trying to find its footing from what was a very sluggish season last year for the most of the season in terms of like the passing game, especially. And the Ravens defense is really good. The Chiefs offense kind of hits this lull in the middle couple quarters. And maybe the Ravens do lean on that run game and the physicality a little bit more. Maybe the Ravens do find a little bit more working in the passing game, whether it's a big step from Flowers, from Bateman, or finding a way to use Andrews and Likely together. They just get 10% better on offense, while the Chiefs don't get any better on what their offensive performance was last year. Like, the Chiefs controlled that game after the first quarter. They were in control the entire game, but they didn't blow them out. They were having a hard time, really putting the game away till deep into it, and the offense never really made the plays. So if that continues again and the Ravens find some success with one of those things I mentioned, that could lead to them winning.
I think the Ravens have to throw the ball to win this game too. And look, this is going to be a Chiefs team in week 1 that is going to be feeling some things out with their secondary a little bit. They've lost L'Jarius Sneed, so they got to figure out how to account for that. So that could be a potential detriment to this team's early passing defense success. And so if the Ravens can get out there and chuck the ball around the yard a little bit and exploit that, I think that could be a dangerous outlook for the Chiefs trying to slow this team down. I think one thing that we don't think about too much with this team too is, the Ravens are very good at starting fast as well. They are a team that comes out the gate very strong. They are apt to blow teams out in week 1, I think, as we've talked about at one point here too. So you're looking at two teams that like to start fast, that do start fast. Weird. The Andy Reid tree having some teams that come into the season ready, week 1, ready to go. So I think that's that's how I'd do it. If I were the Ravens, I'd try to exploit the passing game a little bit and see if we can challenge this secondary that might be figuring some things out a little bit. By the way, we're going to answer some chat questions, both about the Ravens game or anything else you guys might have to close the show out. While you get those questions in, though, we got a couple other things to talk about. So, Maddie, who is the Chiefs' non-Mahomes MVP of the game against the Ravens?
Okay, so the Ravens have a very good safety in Kyle Hamilton, but as we saw, the Chiefs have this guy named Travis Kelce across from him. And so that's a pretty big matchup. But Tucker, cue the trumpets. Cue them up. Get the bugle ready. The bit has to go. I can't do Travis Kelce for every non-Mahomes MVP for the rest of our lives. There's only 2 of us. It's not fair to you, the listeners, to only get one non-Mahomes MVP every show. So we are right now retiring the Travis Kelce non-Mahomes MVP bit, and we are looking deeper. We are going farther. We are putting on our best Craig Stout hat, and we are giving you a defensive player, an under-the-radar pick. I am going with, and don't lose me here, I am going with Drew Tranquill, playing his first game as the starting linebacker next to Nick Bolton against a team that wants to rely on the run, getting that extra backer on the field, the Chiefs being able to live out of a nickel, a heavier nickel. It's going to require Tranquill to come up, play the run, take on these big offensive linemen, and the few times the Baltimore Ravens try to get into play action, he's going to play a big part containing Lamar Jackson, play a big part in catching an Andrews or a Henry or whoever they're trying to leak out in the flats. So I think Drew Tranquill is going to play a pivotal part in this game.
That was the most beautiful eulogy I've ever heard. I just can't. I even started to roll my eyes when you said Travis Kelce, and then you just flipped the script on me.
That was great. Thank you, Tucker. Tucker is the man behind all that. Tucker is the best.
You just had that ready, Tuck?
You can call Maddie in the middle of the day. I can also talk to Maddie in the middle of the day as well.
That's so great. Oh man. What a job there, Matthew Lane. That was great.
I love the bit. The bit was a lot of fun. I didn't want the people to think I forgot. I didn't forget. It's got to go. It ran its course. It did its thing. It did its three-peat. It had its three-peat. It had its time in the sun, and now it's time to move on.
The funny thing is, I'm not even joking you. So many thoughts rushed to my head while you were bringing Travis Kelce up. And one of them was, oh no, I'm going to have to carry this segment every single week. Because you're gonna still pick Travis Kelce every time. It's like we're a team of 2 now, and now it's just me having to just pick one player.
That might have been just as good of a bit, honestly.
Yeah, you would have liked that one too. I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm not going Rashee Rice. I'm gonna go Xavier Worthy. I think this team is like, I buy every single thing about this team wanting to air this thing out. So I do think that they're going to try to, chuck the ball down the field a little bit, be more aggressive, more intentional down the field. And I think Xavier Worthy is here to do just that. This is the fastest player in the history of the NFL Combine. He's definitely more than just that, but he still is that. He is a vertical stretch player that can really affect the game, lighten the load up for Travis Kelce and whenever Rashee Rice is on the field. I think the Chiefs are going to be very intentional about getting the ball down the field early and often, setting the tone for the entirety of the season. I think they're going to hit a big one. I think they will hit a big one in this game. Guess the line, Maddie. I think I've already seen the line, but guess the line.
Ooh. Is this game is in Arrowhead?
Correct? In Arrowhead, banner dropping. Closest thing the Ravens will be to a ring.
Wow. Okay. I don't do a lot of sports betting. What's home field go for these days? Is it still 3? Is it a little less?
I think technically a little less these days, but
Okay, 3.5. Chiefs by 3.5.
I have seen Chiefs favored by 3.
Okay.
So that is, that's about right. I think that's a fair line. I think I'm taking Chiefs -3 though. Not gonna lie. I think I like that a little bit. I do think there is a lot of change coming to the Baltimore side. And, I think the Chiefs are more stable. Part of me wonders too, real quick. I do wonder if what happened last year, it's weird because yes, this team won the Super Bowl, but they have the pains of everything that they went through to get to that point. And I don't think they want to go through that again. They don't want this. They don't want to go through this again.
I don't think this team makes it again. I don't think you can run back some of the, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they had to deal with. I don't think you can run that back again and have it work, right? Like if things play out the same, if there isn't a more smoothness, isn't there more cohesiveness, if things don't fall into order, I don't think you can handle the ups and the downs and the frustrations in that locker room and the coaching staff with the players back-to-back seasons and have come out on the other side. I really don't.
So I just think the intentionality of the start of the season for this team and how they're going to want to start fast and how they're going to play, get off to, a good speed on offense and all that stuff. I think the response from this team will, and what they went through last year will actually help them push through the wall of coming off a Super Bowl and being hungover from the Super Bowl, right? I mean, they've already done it twice, but I do just kind of think they're going to respond differently, and it's going to be the three-peat. It's also like, hey, look, we kind of had some fatal flaws last year we got to fix, and we're not going to let those affect this year's team. We're going to put ourselves in better situations so maybe we can get the 1 seed and be, 1 win away from hosting the Arrowhead Invitational again. So I just have a feeling that this team's response is going to be really strong. Anyways, let's jump in and look at a few questions that you guys might have had. So drop any questions if you've got them. Xavier, number 4 in yards. Does he mean yards on the team?
I'm taking it that way. I'm assuming this is Xavier Worthy ending at number 4 in the Chiefs in receiving yards this season.
So you got Kelce, you got Rice, you got Xavier. I mean, I think he's top. I think Xavier Worthy could lead the Chiefs in receiving this year if he plays 17 games. And it's not on a per game basis. And I mean of the receiver, sorry, not Kelce. I just meant of the receiving group. I think he could be second on this team in receiving, first of the receivers, just because, we don't know how long Rashee Rice is going to miss. But I think because of that, I think Xavier Worthy can rack up some yardages and actually lead this team in receiving.
Are you forgetting about Hollywood Brown?
No, I genuinely think he could.
Okay. I think Rice. I think it's worth noting that Rice may or may not be suspended. We don't know. So him missing time kind of opens up number 4 and receiving a lot for me. Because if you're going to play your safe bets here, Kelce, Rashee Rice, if he's healthy, and Hollywood Brown, again, if healthy, they should all probably have more yards on paper than Xavier Worthy. It's just Hollywood Brown has missed time. If Travis Kelce's even a step slower during the regular season than he was last year, that's even attainable. And then Rashee Rice might be suspended. So Xavier Worthy, if he plays more games than all of them, yeah, there's a chance. I would lean Hollywood Brown as my favorite to lead the team in yards. That might even be over Kelsey. I'm not sure if I want to go there yet or not. I'm still debating. But yeah, I think Worthy being number 4 in yards would be good for the Chiefs. If he's number 4 in receiving yards for this team, assuming Rice doesn't miss an extended period of time, like a long time, and no one's injured, I think that'd be a good case scenario for the Chiefs.
Yoder asks, which rookie are you most intrigued to see in their first game against NFL level competition? I have mine. I don't know if you have yours.
You go first because I don't want to take it from you if you have one.
I'm really excited to see Kingsley Suamataia against NFL competition. And it's just because, left tackle is such a huge position. They took him in the second round. The developmental arc of him is going to be so crucial to determining like whether or not the Chiefs are going to be able to play him in week 1. And I think that's one of the weak spots on this team, potentially, if Kingsley isn't able to take a step, if Wanya is not able to take a step. So getting eyes on Kingsley early and getting a chance to see what he's made of against NFL competition, that's a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing and the one I want to get eyes on the most.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the correct answer, right? I don't know if you could really come up with a better answer than him. So I'm going to go with Jaden Hicks just to be a little bit different. And I don't even know how much he'll play, right? I don't even know how much he'll play early on because that's a strong safety room. But if he gets out there, that's a step up in competition going from the Pac-12 to the NFL. He's young. Can he mentally play fast enough? Because he's not the fastest guy, not the rangiest safety, but he's a big, versatile downhill kind of guy. Can he keep up with the speed of the NFL and Spagnuolo's system to make a presence kind of be felt this first year as a rookie? Kind of like Connor did down the stretch.
Gary asks, what's your biggest question mark coming into training camp? Gary himself believes Mahomes has his best version of the Chiefs he's ever had. Interesting.
I mean, it's the left tackle spot for me. I don't think they felt great about Wanya Morris being the only left tackle on the roster, and their only competition they've brought in so far is Suamataia, who is a rookie, a young rookie coming out of BYU, which is a heavy RPO system with essentially 1 year of left tackle experience at the college level coming in. And that's your competition for Wanya Morris, who, again, I don't think they're overly comfortable with being the left tackle. So hopefully somebody really stands out during training camp, because as of right now, that's a scary spot to be in my opinion.
I think it's cornerback too. Like that's the other one. I think that is a little bit tricky is, hey, look, the Chiefs are trying to replace, or figure out the left tackle spot with 2 unprovens, and they're saying goodbye to L'Jarius Sneed and trying to replace him, with a lot of young developmental guys that they've had on their roster for the last few years. But, and yes, you have the All-Pro and Trent McDuffie, but you're not truly replacing a L'Jarius Sneed, as Dave Merritt said this week. You're trying to, you're not, maybe not even trying to go like for like. You're just trying to, have a solid group there. I think how they figure that out is going to really determine how far this defense is going to be able to go. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? I got a couple. No, you go one. If you got one you're excited about, go for it.
Listen, we got to get this one in here. Does my guy Nico Remigio make the 53-man roster? Listen, I want to say yes. I am leader of the Remigio revolution here. I want to say yes, but it's a really crowded spot for a shallow underneath wide receiver that might see the most of his time in the slot, right? There's not a ton of roster availability for that guy when you have Worthy, when you have Hollywood Brown. Not that they're limited to the slot, but they're going to play there a lot. And Rice is playing there a lot. And then, Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore kind of have to play there the majority of their reps. You get deep down the depth chart with guys that are crowding where I think he's going to be at his best. I do wonder if the new kickoff rules might help him a little bit. I haven't heard much about him as a returner, but he was a good returner in college. So maybe there's a little bit there. I have hopes. We'll see how training camp goes. I think he's either going to be the guy a lot of us fall for in training camp and he goes off the sign with another team, or he's going to be a guy that, he does slip under the bottom end of the roster. I'm thinking of Amir Smith-Marset last year that Chiefs fans kind of started to really like. And then he goes off and gets signed by the Panthers. And it was just a little frustrating given how the wide receiver room played out.
All right, I'm going to close on this one.
Perfect.
Rory DEC, Rory Deck. I don't know how you want to say this. What do you think is going to be the score of Chiefs Ravens, Matthew?
Oh my goodness. Chiefs are going to score 24 points and the Ravens are going to score 20 points. So the Chiefs win by 4.
I'm going to go 28-20. Chiefs win. Xavier Worthy is catching a touchdown over 40 yards. I'm buying the Xavier Worthy hype, man. I'm all in. I can't wait to see what happens. I
think both teams come out slinging. I think both teams come out trying to make a statement on offense. So I think that's why you see a little bit more points between these two teams than I think some might think. Also a little bit better weather than the last time that they played where it was freezing cold, right? So I think both offenses are going to come out with a purpose, and you're going to get some points early. Teams will look good, and then the defenses will kind of lock it up in the later half of the game.
You heard it here first. Matthew Lane has predicted good weather in early September. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, for supporting KC Sports Network. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll catch you later. Craig is great.